This video is sponsored by Sterling Insurance.
Want to make your DIY camper look like an off-road beast, but not sure how to do it on a budget? Well, you're in luck, because we're going to show you exactly how to do that.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Van Conversion 101, the video series where we show you how to convert a van from start to finish. Last week we took you through the steps to prepare your van for a conversion, so this included things like clearing out the exterior, rust proofing, and making sure that everything is watertight. So if you haven't watched that video, be sure to go check it out. There'll be a link on the screen now and one in the description as well.
In this video, we're going to show you step by step how to take your van from this to something a bit more like this. This will cover things like respraying, mounting ladders, cargo panels, and installing a roof rack. We're going to discuss where to buy these items, how much it all costs, and how we found the process. So yeah, if you're looking to respray your van in a funky color, but you don't know how to do it on a budget, then this is probably the video for you. Also, as always, any products that we mention in the video will be linked in the description down below.
Things to consider. If you want to skip ahead to the practical stuff and don't want to listen to us waffle, then there are time codes in the description below. The first thing to think about is cost. Exterior components like a roof rack, a spare wheel holder, and a ladder are expensive and, to be honest, unnecessary. We mentioned right at the start that we did this on a budget, which is true, but we could also have made absolutely none of these changes and still had a fully functional adventure van.
Yeah, in fact, in our previous van, we didn't do any of these things, and we loved her, and she was perfect, and we went on many adventures, so you really don't need these items. They're just if you want to have a funkier looking van.
And there are other benefits. So for example, the roof rack or the cargo panels on the back can be used to store more bulky items like bikes and surfboards. The spare wheel holder and the recovery tracks that we've got are now nice and accessible.
Yeah, that's funny you actually say that, because when we went to Portugal, we really wanted some surfboards, but we didn't have anywhere to store them. So on this new van, hopefully we can store them in the roof rack.
A ladder and roof rack are also necessary if you're going to be putting a roof deck up there, which we're thinking about doing.
So we spent just over £1,500 on all of the upgrades that we did, and there is a link to a full product list in the description down below. So this will include all of the products, the price of that product, and the link to where we actually bought them. But yeah, here are the costs of the main products that we installed.
The real bargain here was £230 for the two roof racks, which we bolted together to form the big thing that's up on the roof now. These were secondhand, but in really good condition, and once they'd been sanded and painted, they look brand new. So
the next thing to consider is weight and fuel economy. In the next video, we will be talking about doing a detailed design. So this will include a section about how to manage weight properly. But yeah, basically, the heavier you are, obviously, the less fuel efficient you are.
Also need to watch out for the 3.5 ton weight limit, which I'm sure you've heard about. If you go over this, you're looking at needing a GVM uprating, which involves a lot of DVLA paperwork and upgrades to the suspension as well. In this case, you would also need to make sure that your driving license allows you to drive a vehicle that's over 3.5 tons. If you took your test before 1997, which we did not, then you're probably fine. If not, then you will need to take another test to make sure that you're able to drive a vehicle which is between 3.5 and 7.5 tons. Ultimately, it is time consuming and expensive to do both of these things, so just avoid it if possible.
The reason that we're mentioning this now is because some of these upgrades will add significant weight, like the big steel roof rack. So it's important to consider the weight that you'll be adding to your van.
A roof rack will also reduce your fuel efficiency by negatively affecting the aerodynamics of the vehicle. Fortunately for us, the Transit is actually the most fuel efficient large van on the market right now. And we've also found that keeping to about 65 miles an hour on the motorway is really helpful for keeping that miles per gallon high. Still, this is definitely something to consider. If you're not doing a roof deck and you don't have any larger items that you need to carry, it's probably not worth installing a roof rack.
So you will probably be cutting holes in the van, particularly in this part of the van conversion, but obviously throughout it. So we thought we'd just talk about the process of doing that. It's pretty much the same every time.
Yeah.
So when you are about to cut a hole, you obviously want to make sure that there's nothing on the other side or there's nothing important that you're going to be hitting, which you might think is obvious, but in our previous van conversion, we'll cut the bolts off the top of our door, and
we are a team. We cut the bolts off
and
of
then
our
the
sliding door.
just slid off the rails. So,
but we replaced it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, check that you're not going to be cutting anything important. The second step would be starting with a smaller drill bit. It might be worth investing in a stepper drill bit. We actually haven't, but it's possibly something that we will buy. After you've drilled the hole, then you need to file it down. Make sure you collect any metal shards, wipe it with a bit of white spirit, and then rust-proof paint it. And that is pretty much the steps you take every time you cut into the van metal.
The last thing for us to mention at this point is, depending on what equipment you are going to be installing and using, it's important to have the right PPE. Mira's laughing because we haven't often adhered to this in the past, but we need to now because we have a sponsor.
I was looking back over some videos from our first van conversion. I swear, Will was this close to cutting his entire hand off.
Anyway.
If you don't want to die, get yourself some good PPE. So we do this at the beginning of every one of our videos, and it's all of the tools and materials that you'll need at each stage of the build.
As we mentioned earlier, we have linked a spreadsheet below with the full tool and component list with a cost breakdown as well, so check that out.
You'll see the tools and materials that you'll need on the screen as well. Before we get onto the work that we've done in the past couple of weeks, we just wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor for the Van Conversion 101 series, Sterling Insurance. They are the UK's #1 van conversion insurer, so whether you're taking your van on short breaks, holidays, extended trips further afield, or if you're in the conversion stage like us, they have a policy for you.
One of the things that we really love about Sterling Insurance is their customer service. The Sterling team are super helpful and informative. If you prefer to get your quote online, then you can do so really quickly through their website. Once you have a policy, it's so easy to keep track of the details with a My Sterling online account. You can use this to view your policy documents, keep track of payments, and even request changes at the click of a button.
If you're starting out on a van conversion journey just like us, then you should definitely check out Sterling Insurance for your cover. There's a link to their website in the description down below. Respraying the van. So this is something that we didn't do on our previous van conversion and we're really excited to do this time round. The reasons that we decided to do this is because firstly we had a little more wiggle room with our budget this time round, but also we just wanted her to look a little funkier and not just like a classic work van.
So there were a few different options for doing this. The main one, of course, would be a full respray. So we did actually go to a few places to look at this. We are taking the van to a, what do you call it? Like a customs place.
Yeah.
And inquiring about how much it would cost to get the van resprayed. I personally am not a fan of the white colour of our van.
Oh my gosh, I look ill.
It really washes you out. This is why people think that we're siblings, because you do.
We do not look
white.
like siblings, but oh my gosh, I do look kind of ill. Anyway, I also don't really like the white colour of the van, but it is looking at being 4,000 plus to get her resprayed. So
yeah,
don't
it's
know if
possibly
it's
just we might just leave it. We were quoted over £6,000 from every place that we went to, which is fair, especially if you want a good job.
Yeah. So the other options that we had were doing a partial respray, which was about half of that, so £3,000. And then we also looked into just wrapping the van, which we had on our previous van, but we didn't actually pay for it. It was the previous owner who did it.
Yeah.
And that was coming in at around £2,000, I think.
Yeah. While the partial respray and the wrap would have been within the budget that we wanted to spend, we decided to just kind of do a DIY solution instead.
Because it was still cheaper. It would still be cheaper to do it DIY ourselves than do either
Quite
of
a
those
lot
other
cheaper,
options.
yeah, which you'll see a little bit later. And also, you know, while the wrap was the cheapest option and would cover the whole van, we weren't really that keen on how...
I didn't really like the way it looked, actually.
I didn't hate the way it looked, but they're not that hard wearing. They can rip quite easily, and yeah, I agree. I'm not enamored with the way that they look.
I actually think respraying always looks better.
Yeah.
Whether it's just like partial or, you know, what we've done where it's just various little bits of the van.
So what we chose to do, as I'm sure you can see, is use Raptor paint to spray all of the trim pieces, the bumpers, the grille, and all the accessories that we're putting on the van as well.
Why did we choose Raptor paint? There are a couple of reasons for this, but I guess the number one is that it's a specialty automotive paint that is particularly hard wearing. Pretty versatile, so it can be applied to a bunch of different materials. So obviously we've got the trim pieces that are plastic, but then we've got the roof rack and ladder, which are metal. So we needed this paint to go on all different types of material.
The Raptor paints have really good reviews, and we've seen lots of different people use them to respray their whole van.
We've heard that you pretty much never need to repaint it as well.
Yeah.
Once it goes on once, if you've done it in the correct way, it should stay on for a long time.
Yeah.
So those are the reasons why we picked Raptor paint. Now we're going to go through the actual process. After we decided on Raptor paint, we had to pick a color.
The Raptor paint only comes in RAL color codes, so we'll put a link in the description for the color chart that we used, but there are lots of different options, so you can get pretty much any color.
Don't be like us and leave it to the last minute, because you can't mix RAL colors in the normal places like B&Q and just the normal shops. You have to order sample pots online. If you're not sure on the color and you want to test it out, then order a tester pot online. Because basically what we did is we didn't order them online. We didn't know that you couldn't get them in store. We went to a bunch of stores and had to buy colors that we thought were close matches and then test them out on the trim. But they, in the end, didn't look anything like our final color.
No. I think, to be honest, we went for a relatively safe color. Lots of auto paint companies online will offer the Raptor kits. They normally come in single or 4-bottle kits. And depending on how much area you're covering, you'll need to buy a different amount. So for us and the amount of area that we had to cover, we ended up buying 2 of the 4-bottle kits with the green paint. And we also bought a couple of the single bottle black kits to do some of the more minor bits that we were keeping black anyway. So the trim at the bottom of the sides of the van and the wing mirrors. And one Raptor 4-bottle kit will cover an area of about 12 square meters. And that's with the recommended number of coats.
When we decided that we weren't going to do the half spray or the wrap, we had to decide what we would want to paint ourselves. In the end, because we weren't sure how it would turn out and we are super new to this, we decided we'd go with what was easiest, which is removing all the trim pieces from the van and painting those.
And also painting all the accessories that we were going to put on, so the roof rack and the ladder. And lots of different auto paint companies online offer the Raptor kit. We actually wound up buying it through eBay from a company called Marlowe Paint Supplies. They had a very good price and offered next day delivery, and yeah, we were impressed with the service.
Step 2 in this process was taking all the trim pieces off.
If you've watched our last video, you'll know that this is something you have to do anyway if you're going to seal up all of the side panels. We bought a very cheap trim removal kit from Amazon, which comes with a variety of plastic and metal tools which help you get all of these moldings off. Best practice is try to identify where the rivets are underneath the plastic moldings which hold them in place, and then prise the trim pieces off at these points one at a time. There's less risk then of breaking the rivets, which you will need to replace afterwards.
Some of the trim pieces will be screwed in as well. Just have a look on the sides of the trim pieces and also sort of up underneath them. For us, for example, the wheel arch pieces, the front bonnet piece, the bits on the driver and passenger doors were also screwed in.
While we were removing all of these moldings, we also took off the front and rear bumpers and the grille as well. We bought a new grille to go with this, which was quite an expensive luxury, but it was just something that we liked the look of.
It looks so much better.
It does look better, yeah. At this point, we also assembled the things that are going on the back of the van, so the ladder and the spare wheel holder, just so that we could get a more even paint coverage. Now, this actually turned out to be a little bit of a mistake, which we'll get onto later, so maybe don't do that.
Yeah, maybe not. The things like the ladder, you probably
yeah, that
can.
was quite safe to screw together.
The next step was washing and sanding all of the plastic and metal pieces. All of the plastics and metals had a good wash in some soapy water. This was made easier by the fact that we went to a garage car wash, so they had a power hose.
The main aim here is just to remove any dirt before you start sanding them down, which is the next step.
So yeah, then we sanded everything down. We just used a regular orbital sander, but we actually found that a belt sander worked particularly well on the roof rack.
The roof rack was slightly different because there was some leftover paint because they were secondhand. So we had to remove the black paint first, and yeah, the belt sander came in handy there. As you can see, we have laid out everything that's going on the van. It's all going to be painted, which is why we've got all this paint, which I'll get to in a sec. So as you can see, we've got the roof racks up against the side here, the ladder, the new grille, spare wheel holder, bike mount, whatever you would call them. That's a little cargo plate, and then all of the molding that's going back on the van as soon as we get it painted. So I just kind of wanted to talk you through what the painting entails. The process basically is, we've already sanded down most of the gloss paint that was on the roof rack. So that's pretty much bare metal now. You need to give a light sand to everything that you're doing this on. So even the plain bare metal that we've got here, that's going to have a light sand with 240 grit sandpaper. Same with all of the plastics. This is just to help the paint adhere to the surface and make sure that it doesn't peel off. We've also then got these. So this is an epoxy-based primer that goes on all of the metal parts after it's been sanded and degreased. And this is an adhesion promoter, so that goes on all of the plastic bits. I'd love to tell you why you use a different thing, but I don't know the answer. We've then got these two kits here. Three, actually. This is the black one, which we're just using for a couple of the smaller bits. And some of the stuff that was going to be black anyway. But these kits here, so this is the tintable Raptor paint. And you've also got a mixing cup and a tub of hardener in here. So you have to mix these two together. We used 180 grit sandpaper for all of the plastic parts and the aluminium ladder as well. For the steel parts, we used a slightly heavier grit. I think we used 80. Sanding the plastic parts also helped us get rid of any little scratches that had been on there from the previous owners.
See, at this stage as well, you probably want to tape off anywhere you don't want to get paint. So for us, it was just like the ladder rungs.
The next part is preparing the surfaces for painting. So this is slightly different for the plastics and the metals.
All right, so we are super excited because today we're actually starting to paint.
I feel like we've been prepping for this for weeks now.
I feel like it has been weeks.
Yeah.
We've got all of the metal bits in the little paint room. So yeah, we're going to start with all the metal bits, which you can kind of see behind us. And then we're going to do all of the plastic trim pieces and things like that over the weekend. And hopefully we'll have it all done by next week.
So the metal bits include all the different sections of our roof rack. We've then got the ladder that's going on the back as well, the spare wheel holder down there. All of the brackets for the roof rack are on the table. We've also got some other smaller things, so that's brackets for the bike holders themselves, and the little cargo panel that's going on the back as well.
What we're going to do now, degrease all the surfaces first. We've got this like big degreaser here. Degreasing is just to clean the surface and obviously remove any dust.
You can buy a dedicated degreaser from Raptor, but it's quite expensive and I don't see any reason why it would be necessary.
Yeah, I think we found the one from Screwfix was
fine.
Yeah. After degreasing, we're going to put on a primer, so you can do this almost immediately after degreasing. This is a epoxy primer for the metal, and it says on it that you only need to leave it for 5 minutes in between coats, but we're probably going to leave it slightly longer just to be sure that it's properly dry. Most surfaces will probably only need 1 to 2 coats, but you can put extra coats on anything that's particularly rusty or damaged.
All of this information is available in some little helpful videos on the Raptor website, so definitely check that out if you're doing this.
So you need to do 2 coats of primer on all of the metals. All of this should probably be done in a clean, dust-free environment.
We were quite lucky to have a paint room in the workshop that we could use.
They not like us. They not like us.
Even that wasn't completely dust-free, but
oh no,
it was good
really
enough.
wasn't.
We also degreased the plastics and then primed them as well. For the plastics, we used Raptor's adhesion promoter, which is actually only designed for hard-to-reach plastic bits that you can't necessarily sand, but we used a coat of it all over.
Again, we did 2 coats of that with a 15-minute gap in between. But yeah, now we're going to talk about actually applying your Raptor paint.
Mixing the paint is really easy. Everything that you need comes with the kit. You normally mix 3 parts Raptor paint with 1 part hardener, and then you can add your tint or color to up to 10% by weight. The hardener will come with the bottle kits. If you do get a 4 bottle kit, then it comes in a larger tin, so you will have to measure out the amount that you need. I think it's 237 ml per bottle, which is weirdly specific. And then you can add your color by weight as well. So usually for a single bottle, that's 100 ml of paint. It's then really important to thoroughly mix the bottles. You can just put the cap back on and shake it for at least 2 minutes and quite vigorously. There are a few different ways to apply the Raptor paint. You can use a brush if you've got any hard to reach places. You can also use a roller, which we did for the first coats on the roof rack, just to make sure that we got nice even coverage. And the last and most common way to apply the paint is using a spray gun. I am all prepped and ready to start shooting for the day. So I just thought I'd explain a little bit about how we do that. Up here, you can't see it very well. Ooh, where am I putting it? There? About up there, there's an air compressor, which is kept on kind of the loft area above the main part of the workshop. You might be able to see this blue line here. So that is the air compressor, and that goes all the way through into the paint room here. And you can see up in this corner, that feeds through to this little valve here. So you've got 2 tubes coming off here before the valve. One of them, this black tube here, has the full 120 psi. That goes to this little gun, which we use for knocking off. And then the valve here, you can pull this up and adjust the pressure just by twisting that there. So at the moment, I've got it on about 60 psi. The Raptor paint, they recommend between 40 and 60. I found the higher end tends to leave you with a bit less splatter, which is nice. This is the gun that comes with the Raptor paint. It comes in a few different parts, but I've already assembled this one. It looks a little bit gross, but... So when I've mixed this next bottle of Raptor, that is going to screw onto the underside here, so the bottle just sits there. There's a tube which obviously feeds down to the bottom, so you can get all of the paint out of the can. Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. There's an adapter here, which I've actually borrowed from someone in the workshop, which just allows me to connect it to this hose from the air compressor. So, see that there? And that just goes onto the end, sits over the top like that. And there you go. So yeah, once I have mixed the next can of paint, I'm going to get around to spraying some of these plastic bits.
So the recommended amount of coats for Raptor paint is about 2 to 3 with a 60-minute gap in between them.
Because we actually had so many pieces to paint, we ended up leaving them for at least 24 hours in between the 2 coats. While the Raptor paint will be touch dry in about an hour, the full curing time is actually several days.
You're also not meant to expose any of the Raptor paint to water until it's been drying for at least 72 hours. Putting the trim back on.
As you can see, we have finally got everything painted. So we're just going to go round the van and pop it all back on. After that, we're going to be installing the ladder and the spare wheel holder on the back, and we can also put the roof rack on as well. Hopefully it'll look a little bit cooler and not like a van that's just been broken into.
This is something that we talked quite extensively about in our previous video, which you can go check out. But just quickly, before you pop the trim pieces back on, you need to do a bead of silicone around any little holes, and then you just squish the...
Pop them all back on.
Yeah.
Make sure to replace any screws that were holding them in place. But yeah, popping all the trim back on should be quite a straightforward process.
Also, some of the rivets might have broken when you were taking them off. You have to replace these for them to slot back in properly. So you can buy replacements off Amazon or eBay. We put all of the trim pieces back on the van, including the grille, which looked so good. And I think was probably one of my favorite parts so far. So we just got to the workshop, and it's the first time we're actually seeing the painted trim in the daylight, because yesterday we finished at like really late, probably like 9 p.m. So yeah, we haven't actually seen it in the daylight, and it looks so pretty. How do you think it looks, Will?
Yeah, I'm pleased with it. I think, you know, we got it out and some bits were looking a bit dusty, so it didn't look quite matched up, but it looks really nice. I think especially the front part, when we get that in the sun, looks really nice.
It's kind of hard to see on
I'm pleased
camera,
with it, yeah.
but I'll do a close-up. And it's like this really nice green, like what would you call this? Dark green? Fur green color. And it also has a like lovely texture to it. And then we've also got our grill on, which looks so good. I'm also going to do a quick review of how this process went for us.
No, it went moderately well. It went moderately well, that's all I'd say. Yeah, when you look at the costs that we mentioned at the start, so like a partial respray was going to be $3,000. We've done all of the painting for under £300. The price difference is definitely worth it. I think the paint is quite tough and hard wearing. We don't have too many problems with it. There are a couple of places where I think maybe if you scratch a small section off, that can suddenly turn into quite a big section that comes off. We don't really have any places like that, but you can see how it would happen. But we've been driving the van around for a few weeks now, and it's been completely fine.
I'm really impressed with the finish of it.
Yeah.
I didn't think that it would come out this well, which, I think the process was long. I think from start to finish, we spent about 3 weeks.
It's worth mentioning we have jobs and things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do it faster if you were doing this full time, but just the taking all the pieces off, sanding everything down thoroughly, cleaning absolutely every surface, priming every surface, painting everything with 2 coats. It took a long time. Yeah.
You've also got to have the space to be able to do to paint it and leave it to dry and all of these things. So yeah, it was a little bit fiddly. It took a long time, but overall we were impressed with how it came out. Well, I was at least.
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing that I would say is that when you mix your paint, to use all of your mixed paints on one coat and then start a new mix of paint for the next coat. Do all of your pieces in that new mix of paint, if that makes sense, because there are subtle differences in color between the 2 mixes.
Obviously, we tried our best to mix 100 ml of color into every bottle of Raptor, but if that is slightly different, you might end up with a slightly different shade. For example, some of the bits that we did differently, our wheel arches, we did at a very slightly different time to everything else. so you can see a subtle difference in the shade. It's not something that anyone would notice really unless you pointed it out
Yeah.
to them, I don't think.
It's just something we noticed.
But we do. The other thing when you're using the Raptor bottles is you do need to actually finish a bottle in the painting session that you're doing. You can't leave them overnight. They tend to go quite hard and sticky within an hour of using them.
Would we recommend it? Yeah, if you have the time and the space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Obviously, we will be updating you on here, but if you want to see more real-time van conversion bits, then definitely check out our other socials. There will always be a link in the description down below, but I'll also leave a link on the screen. We do Instagram and TikTok short form videos. Yeah, we'll definitely let you know how the Raptor paint fares.
Spare wheel holder.
Now I'm going to talk about this thing.
This is our spare wheel holder. Most vans will already have a spare wheel and a spare wheel holder. Some of the Ford Transits actually don't. It is an optional extra that you can add for almost no money. But it turns out the people who had this before us did not take that option. Usually the spare wheel would be housed on the underside of the vehicle at the back. And you can see there is a space underneath there where it should be, but there's no cage or mounting brackets for it.
Why would you not want a spare wheel? That's ridiculous.
I'll tell you why, Mira, because I looked this up. Some of the Transits don't come with them nowadays, and they opt instead for a tyre mobility kit, which is essentially a pretty good puncture repair kit, which saves space and weight inside the vehicle.
Probably also money.
And helps with fuel efficiency and money, but you know it only costs £5 to add the spare wheel.
What?
I'm pretty sure you can buy the spare parts to mount the wheel on the underside. You can just buy those from a Ford spares and repairs place. But we decided that we wanted to have it mounted on the back because we liked the way that it looked. That's pretty much the only reason. This was the most expensive part of this.
So you're telling me something that we chose just for looks was actually the most expensive part of this little process.
Hush now. This cost us £365 from a UK-based company called Williams.
Which is funny because obviously his name's Will. Williams.
They manufacture these specifically for your type of vehicle. So as you can see, these actually go right on top of the hinges for the door, which means you don't need any kind of hinge modification, which you might need from a universal carrier.
So it's supposed to be really easy to install.
Just going back to that thing that Ford do now by not including a spare wheel, we would definitely recommend having a spare wheel.
Yes. Yeah.
We used ours 2 or 3 times.
I'm more than
5, can't have been 5.
Oh, we broke down on the motorway in Spain. We broke
Twice,
down.
actually. We got down twice
twice in Spain. I'm pretty sure we burst
Popped
our
a tyre
tire in Italy.
Anyway, the reason I brought that up is we actually exploded one of our tires in Spain, and I don't think a tire puncture kit would have cut it.
No, tire was shredded. If you're doing a van conversion, you absolutely need a spare wheel. In fact, get more than one.
Yeah, you could
Load
do that
up like
if you've got
6.
it was expensive, I think, for what it is, but we like it. It's really well made, easy to install. Like I say, you don't need to modify the hinges or anything like that. You just bolt the whole thing together.
So this is basically our spare wheel holder, and Will's just kind of seeing where it's actually going to go on the van.
Basically, you just use the existing bolts which hold the door on.
So
I'll open the door up in a second and show you.
on the side here.
Yeah.
And that one up there.
So they're used to hold the spare wheel holder up there and down there, and then you just have 2 bolts through the skin, and we can put a little bit of adhesive on there as well. And yeah, I'm hoping this will be
I think it will be really cool.
easy job.
I'm excited.
Okay.
No, don't say that.
I know.
Hang the spare wheel holder. We've got to hook it in here. You can see it there. And then also down here on the bottom door hinge as well. So we've encountered some problems.
You're filming me.
Yeah.
I'm having a tantrum. Film yourself.
What's happened?
Right.
Just explain.
It's
It's
I
actually
still
not a
don't
big
quite
issue.
know how it's happened, to be honest. But basically, try as we could not get the spare wheel holder to fit correctly on the door. We thought for some reason that they might have sent us the wrong one, something for the wrong van. But actually, we've just taken it all apart and tried to fit the main pieces individually, and it does seem to be fitting. So
Yeah, so now we just have to screw it back on, like the actual wheel holder back on. And also we are going to clean up the transit letters, by the way, guys.
oh yeah.
Yeah, so they are hooked on there and there, but yeah, we couldn't do it.
They're just screwed in loosely at the moment, so we're going to kind of screw the whole thing back together and then tighten it up, and then we just have to do the 2 holes in the door for the support of this side. So hopefully, I'm not even going to say it. I'm not even going to say it.
We always joke that every time Will says, or like one of us says, oh yeah, it's going to be easy, it's like the hardest task ever, and it takes us double the time, and something always goes wrong. And yeah, so far that has proven true. So yeah, if you are getting this spare wheel holder, don't bolt it together before you mount it onto the door.
We've watched other people install these same wheel carriers fully assembled and have no problems, so I'm not sure where our issue really came with.
I hadn't seen it being installed on a Ford Transit, so if you've got a Ford Transit, then yeah,
don't put it together.
After we figured out what we'd done wrong, it was really easy to install.
Ladder. Options for van ladders are quite limited in the UK. This is the Rhino 7-step ladder. It attaches right to the skin of the door with braces on the inside as well, so it's nice and secure. This one is actually designed for the Ford Transit, but that bottom bracket is designed to fit around the Ford badge. We actually ended up putting it on upside down. So I'll tell you the reason. If you put it the right way round, the ladder would actually shift about, I don't know, 20 centimeters this way. It would go over the door handle, which I thought was a bit annoying. So it wouldn't be able to cover up the dent, the slight dent up there.
So yeah, maybe think about also doing it upside down. If you have big dents in your door too.
Yes.
It's an aluminium ladder, which means it's lightweight, easy to install, and also works with the bike brackets that we've got. Screwfix and Fiamma also have good options, but they are a bit more expensive.
Those ones are universal ones, so they can go on all sorts of vans. You can also buy a fabricated ladder that's designed for your make and model of van. So similar to the company that we got the spare wheel holder from, they have ladders on offer, but they are quite a bit more expensive. So we thought that the ladder for £180 was quite a good deal.
A lot of van conversions have the Rhino ladder, and they seem to work really well.
In terms of mounting it, there will be a video here, but I've got a feeling it gets quite dark towards the end because we ran out of time. As mentioned, the ladder had already been assembled and painted, so it was just ready to go on with the brackets. The brackets came with some specially shaped pieces of the same EPDM rubber, which we end up using for the roof rack mounts. That just helps provide some skin friction and make sure that the seal to the van is watertight. So we started by putting the bottom bracket on and secured it on the inside with some of the metal plates that were provided. Obviously the inside of the van door in this case is bare, so we could access it quite easily. I'd recommend just following the Rhino instructions because they just show you where all the bolts need to go. It's a full kit. It's been good so far.
Yeah. We tested it out afterwards and it was completely fine. Felt pretty secure on it. Even Will, who...
It's got a weight limit of 120 kilograms, so it can support me and Mira, but probably not at the same time. So
And
that
probably
gives you an idea of how much we weigh.
Probably not our fat cat.
Oh, she can't get on. No. Fall right off. Teach her how to use it actually, so she can get up to the roof deck.
Oh, that would be so cute. And then we have our cargo panel.
Why are you saying that? I like the cargo panel.
No, I like it. It wasn't something that I ever would have thought about. And it's definitely not something that you need again. It's just for fun. The cargo panel was also from Williams and it cost us £50.
We've mounted the ladder and we've mounted the spare wheel holder. So now we're getting around to mounting this little cargo panel, which is going up on the top left there. These are our recovery tracks. We didn't have these last time, but I think these are going to be really useful, especially if you get stuck in mud or sand a lot, which we tend to do. But yes, they come with this bracket here, so you should be able to just unscrew that whenever you need them. The only issue is they have these two quite chunky bolts at the back, so you need to make sure there's enough clearance. So we've got these M6 bolts with a couple of spacers here, and we've just been kind of testing to make sure that gives us enough clearance at the back, and it does. So I'm going to take these off now, and then we're going to mark where these screws need to go. And yeah, it should be a really simple installation.
Don't say that. The whole idea of a cargo panel is that you can attach really whatever you want to it.
Yep.
We initially bought it to attach Will's basketball hoop.
As it happens, the recovery tracks are quite easy to get on and off, but the actual brackets for them need to stay on the cargo panel, and they're not quite as quick to get on and off. So I think I'll be mounting the
basketball hoop somewhere else. One of the things that we had to look out for actually was, obviously we've got our rear camera here, so we had to make sure that we could still see out of the camera with the recovery tracks and the panel there. So that's something we checked before we marked out a place for it. We held up the cargo panel secure with the screws where they needed to be and marked on very roughly where they were going to be. And then we checked it afterwards by measuring the distances between the screws and then measuring it on the actual van.
The cargo panel didn't actually come with fasteners. You can use any M6 set screw. It did come with some little plastic spacers, which came in handy because you need to set the cargo panel out from the door a little. I think it was designed so that you would just have one spacer per bolt, but because we've put our cargo panel right at the top of the door, it would have had a bit of a slant to it. So we ended up putting an extra half spacer on the top screws so it sits a little bit more vertically. I'm pretty sure this will be in the video, but the one thing to watch out for here is the top of our van door actually has an inner skin as well. So in order to attach bolts to the inside, we needed to use a hole saw to get through that layer. So once we drilled those 4 holes on the inside, we could access the bolts from both sides and tighten them up.
Straightforward, probably would recommend again. Well, I guess recommend in that if you've got the extra budget for it, because realistically, again, it's not really something that's necessary.
You can put your cargo, you can put your recovery tracks in the boot.
Yeah. Roof rack. We have a Rhino steel roof rack, and it was actually secondhand off Facebook Marketplace. Is that right? So usually these come in at about how much?
£1,000.
1,000? Really? Wow, still what parking?
You actually can't buy these ones anymore. So Rhino have replaced it with a lighter aluminium roof rack, which is definitely better if you're saving weight, but they don't look as nice.
We paid $230, and that was for 2 roof racks, because we needed extra bits to make it fit on our van, because the initial ones were for different van sizes, if that makes sense. Yeah. They weren't specifically for the Ford Transit, which did cause some problems, but we'll talk about that later.
The reason for going for this rack is that it is very sturdy, durable, and strong.
As we said, there was the element of it looks nice.
It does look nice, yeah.
Also, it's a good base for our solar panels and also mounting a roof deck if we do want to do this.
Again, this is definitely something that you want to consider thinking about the total weight. I think we will most likely look at getting a minor suspension upgrade towards the end of the build.
Today we have a really exciting task that we're doing. We are putting up our roof racks. They have been painted in a coat of, well, several coats of Raptor. So they're also green, like the trim of our van, and all the little bits on the back. And yeah, we've got everything ready.
We have got 10 of these brackets that are going to be holding up the roof rack. They're also in green, and we've already put some EPDM rubber at the bottom, so they'll go on like that. They'll then screw through the roof, or bolt through the roof, I should say, and we'll hopefully create a nice watertight seal. We're also going to go around with some Sudolflex 40FC, which is what we're using for like all the exterior stuff, which is a sealant and adhesive. So yeah, hopefully nice and watertight. They then they will sit like that. Bars of the roof rack will go through, and that will all be bolted together.
It was fairly easy to get the roof rack up onto the top of the van, put a cloth on the side of the van, and then one of us was on top and pulled it up, and the other one pushed it. You know, you get it.
We had actually got the roof rack sections up on the top of the roof before they were painted, just to make sure that we weren't wasting our time and everything fit okay. All right, we've got a couple of little jobs before we can get going on it. So we've got the roof rack up, which you can see now. And the first thing I'm going to do is bolt it all together to make sure that it's, you know, straight and we're actually putting the brackets in the right place. So I've got these, I've just bought normal M8 bolts to do this, but they are a little bit longer than they need to be. Caps to go on the end, so they need to be cut to the right length, really. So I'm going to go up and test now how long that needs to be. It's probably going to be about half of what that is now. And then I've got a vise here, so I'm just going to grip them in there and cut them all off with an angle grinder. Meanwhile, I'm giving Mira some grunt work to do. We have these old, I think they're actually high tensile bolts which came with the roof rack. I mean, they're a bit rusty, which is why I've been soaking them overnight. So Mira is going to scrub those off and get them looking a little bit nicer. These are to secure the brackets to the bars themselves. So it ends up being like that. So this nice smooth part goes underneath the bar so that, you know, when you're pulling them in and out, if you need to, you're not scraping the paint off, which is good. I don't think these are necessary. You can probably just use normal bolts because there's no reason for them to be high tensile, but they came with the roof rack, so we're just going to reuse them.
By the way, they're soaking in white spirit, not just water.
But white vinegar apparently works well as well.
Yeah, it was quite easy to screw together each of the sections, but what wasn't so easy was finding places for the mounting brackets.
As we're doing this roof rack, like completely, you know, custom, let's call it custom rather than budget, we do have a couple of complications. The first of which is that these brackets that came with the rack, they don't have any specific spots for them to go all the way along the side of the roof. We can't put them directly over the rails that go, you know, inside the van, the support beams, because you can't access the holes underneath. And obviously if you're screwing bolts in, you kind of need to grab the bolt on one side and tighten it from the other. But we've identified points all the way along the side where we can put the brackets and have them line up with the bars. The first one that we're starting off with is right at the back. So we've got this nice little flat area here where we can put a bracket on either side, and we can access this underneath as well, so we can get to the bolts for tightening. And this is also right over the support beam at the back, so there's lots of strength there, which is good. So yeah, we're just, now that we've positioned it in the right place, we're gonna drill holes through the roof, which is the scary part. We've already identified that this is a good place to put this last set of brackets. We have a support beam right underneath this bar here, and there's easy access to the underside of the bolts right by this channel here. So yeah, the first thing I'm going to do is just create a little hole in the rubber that we've put on the underside so that I can mark on some holes to drill. Start with a 4mm drill bit, and then I can increase the hole size to 8mm once we've checked that it's the right place. So here's what it looks like on the inside. So if I show you up here, this is where we did the first bracket. Obviously that's the same on the other side. So this is actually behind all of this interior metal. But there was a nice flat section up there. You can focus on that. So you can see where we've come through and put the bolts, and of course they've been sealed with a washer and sealant on the inside as well. The ones at the front, kind of the same story. So we've got a couple more bolts in there. So this here, if you can see this channel that they're sitting on, is that same channel that's up on the top of the van. So we're going to be securing this set of brackets up inside here. So as you can see, this is the channel again, so we're going to be able to get the bolts coming through this front side, which will make it a lot easier to tighten them. And again, there's a nice hole there that I can get a spanner into, so we can tighten them from the inside. And that way, just positioning the brackets over this beam here means that you get the most strength in the roof rack. I'm now just going to drill these holes out to 8mm, and then I'll get the holes cleaned up and go do the same on the other side. I'm just going to give these holes a quick file to make sure that the bare metal is all clean. Give them a quick wipe down with some white spirit, and then once that's dry I will go over the top with some Hammerite rust-proof paint. While that rust-proof paint is drying, I'm just going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on this side. Now that our rust-proof paint has dried, I'm going to be putting the brackets on. And I've also got a very special helper with me today. It's Loli. Loli, come here. She's settled. We're all good. You sunbathing? Okay, so after a little bit of tapping, we've got the collar and the bracket lined up. So I can hopefully easily enough slide through these high tensile bolts. I'm going to get those loosely tightened, and then we will tighten the main brackets through the roof.
Yeah, so it obviously was a bargain, but again, kind of like the painting, it was a lot more work than buying the new product.
Yeah, for sure. It does add a decent chunk of weight as well, probably upwards of 80 kilograms, which is why we're going to have to be a little bit more selective about some of the things that we choose to put inside the van.
One of those things, would we recommend it And we will probably always recommend secondhand things. It's more eco-friendly, it's more budget-friendly. We're always going to recommend it,
Yeah.
but it just takes more time.
The other thing to mention is that for our Ford Transit extra long wheelbase, there are very limited options in the UK for a roof rack. It was basically between a custom job like this or the aluminium Rhino one, which again was over £800. For the Volkswagen Crafter or the MAN TGE, there's a cool company called Yacht, but the roof racks that are new cost over £2,000.
But they do look really cool.
So the last thing we did at this stage of the build was quite a satisfying little job. We just went round and added bolt covers, all of the things that we've put on, so the roof rack and the spare wheel holder. These are just small rubber bolt covers that you can get from eBay, but they just protect the bolts from corrosion and also make them look a little bit nicer. So now everything on our van is
Nice
black,
and neat.
white or
Yeah.
green.
This is how she's looking at the end, and we are so happy with it. Or at least I am.
Yeah,
How
I
do
am.
you say?
Yeah, I really like the way it's turned out. Yeah.
For the price especially, considering at the beginning we were looking at upwards of £3,000 to respray her, just a partial respray that was.
Yeah.
I think I'm really happy with how it's turned out.
Yeah, it could have cost upwards of £5,000 to do
Yeah.
all of this.
Yeah.
And we've done it for just over 1.5. Even though that is still a lot of money to spend.
That is still a
Yeah.
lot of money, and we wouldn't have even dreamed about it on our first van conversion.
Because again, it's not necessary.
Yeah. We're not quite done with this stuff because, as we've mentioned a couple of times, we probably will be doing things like upgrading the suspension. We'll be adding alloy wheels with off-road tires at some point in the future.
In the next video, we are unfortunately going back to the
Boring
the
stuff.
boring stuff for a little bit. We're going to talk you through how we do our detailed design, and we're going to actually finalize a layout, which is something we still haven't done up to this point.
If you want to be part of that process as well, potentially we'll have some questions for you guys and what sort of design you want to see, then definitely follow along on our other social media, so our TikTok and our Instagram. There'll be a link for those in the description down below. Yeah, we really hoped you enjoyed watching this. Let us know what you thought. Let us know where you are with your van conversion. If you have any questions at all, then don't hesitate to write them in a comment down below. Give us a like if you enjoyed it, and hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified when we release new videos, which should be every Friday, although
Sometimes it's not.
yeah.
Because we get busy.
Bye.